I have two very simple questions for you. Is your podiatry business making the money that you feel it should be making for the amount of time you've been in podiatry? And are you having the time off with your family that you feel you deserve after all the time and effort you've put into your business? If you cannot answer yes to both of those questions, please go to my website, tysonfranklin.com, have a read through the coaching section, and consider reaching out to me. I really look forward to talking to you and helping you where I can. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast, a podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. Today is a solo episode, and I want to talk about wowing your patients and why it's so important to wow patients when they first come into your clinic. It can make a huge difference. I'm going to run through a few things that I think you should take note of that will definitely help your business. And if you don't own a podiatry business, this is something just to keep in mind, that even if it's not your business, just doing these things, if you have an opportunity, will just make the relationship between you and the patient so much better. And even as an employee, it will make them talk about you. And there's nothing better than building a great reputation, no matter where it is you actually work. So the first thing I want to run through is it's almost like creating a landing sequence. So as soon as the patient walks into that clinic, and this probably relates more to your receptionist at the reception counter, if the receptionist even just partially stood up or leant forward when the person arrived, gave a big smile, used their name immediately, it might be, "Hi, Sarah, how are you? Welcome to the name of your podiatry clinic. It's great to meet you." It's tiny details can make a massive difference when somebody walks into your clinic. Most clinics will just say, and I was only at doctor's surgery this morning, "Oh, hi, please take a seat. Doctor will be with you soon." That is extremely cold. And I sort of equate it to, have you ever walked into a friend's place or anyone's house? You walk in, everybody might be seated around a lounge, they're all sort of relaxing. You walk in and everyone just turns around and says, "Hey, how you doing?" No enthusiasm. Or have you ever walked into a room when you walk in, everybody gets out of their seat and they either shake your hand or they sit forward and they acknowledge that you've arrived in the room. That makes you feel so much better and makes you actually feel wanted. And I think you can do the same thing when patients actually arrive at your clinic. The second thing I think you should try and do to make a patient feel more welcoming or try and wow them when they arrive is do not have just dead air, that complete silence that can happen in business sometimes. You might have calm, but it might be slightly upbeat music. There might be a subtle scent or a smell in there. I know one of my favorite hotels that I go to, Tempe Mission Palms in Arizona. I've been there about 12 times. You could blindfold me, walk me into the place, and I would know I'm there because of the smell. It's got a distinct smell to it. Plus, when you walk in, they always greet you extremely well. But think about the music. Think about how the place smells. You may even have a TV screen. Whether you're playing a television program or not, you can be careful because you want to keep the sound down. And then there's nothing worse than walking into a clinic. I know I go to my dentist, has a TV set up and it's turned down that much. I can see the picture, but I can't really hear what's happening. Sometimes they do have subtitles underneath, but the subtitles never match up with what's actually happening on the screen, which I find really annoying. But you may have a screen up there and it may have before and after treatment of certain problems. You might just have funny team moments, things that have happened in the clinic, or photographs of what your team have been up to. You might have educational snippets. Could be things you've done in the community. Could be up on that screen flashing through so people can watch it and go, "Oh, okay, this business is very much involved in the community." You could have footwear tips. It might be sporting tips, or you may even be showing stretches on the TV. You can do whatever you want because it's your screen, it's in your business. But what you want to do is just make sure it's interesting to the patient. So if they do have to wait 5 or 10 minutes, they're not going to be sitting there totally bored in complete silence. I think the main part with it, though, is whatever you can have on the screen, don't make it too salesy. Don't make it like you've got them captured there and you're just ramming stuff down their throat that they may or may not be interested in. You just want to give it that really good feel, more about your business. Might be some of the things that you do, but definitely not salesy. You almost want the screen to sort of shed out to them. Competent humans actually work in this particular business. The third thing I want to talk about is offering like a signature arrival touch. Hotels do this really, really well. Depending on the different hotels you'll go to, you'll notice when you arrive that they have a certain way or a certain procedure, steps that they go through, or they do little things that other hotels don't particularly do. You just need to create your podiatry version. And give you a couple of examples. You might just have chilled water bottles with your logo in a fridge in the reception area. And when a patient arrives, you tell them, help yourself, get yourself a bottle of water. In Cairns, we did this because it is quite a hot, humid place. And a lot of patients do turn up and ask for a glass of water anyway. So we end up having our own bottles there. You might have a tea and coffee station. You might have chocolates that sit on your reception counter that they're not just plain ones, but they may actually have your logo on there. And if there's children, you may have something there. There might be a small gift that when children arrive, you might even have your own colouring in book that children can actually colour in while they're waiting. Or if they go in with the parent's the patient, while the parent is actually having the treatment, the child is keeping yourself occupied with a colouring in book. Just think about how can we make that arrival touch point as good as you possibly can. And patients normally remember unexpected hospitality because healthcare rarely provides this. And if you've been to clinics yourself, doctors, physios, chiropractors, maybe other podiatry clinics, you will know for a fact that that's what actually happens. You usually just get there and you basically sit down. So number 4 is remove clipboard energy. Like I said, I went to a dentist recently and I got up the counter, said that I was here, and they said, oh, here, can you fill in these forms? And I went, I do. I only go in there. I go in there every 6 months. The problem is every 12 months, they want me to redo these forms. Even when I tell them nothing has changed. I've still got the same email, same address. I still have to go through it. It annoys the hell out of me. But sometimes for some people, when they're sitting there having to fill in this paperwork, if depending on where they're parking, in the back of their mind, they may be thinking, okay, when is my parking meter going to expire? If I have to fill this in, how long am I going to be waiting before the clinician is actually going to see me? So what you want to do is try and modernize this as much as possible. Send a link or forms to them that they can do digitally, or they can just tick something and say, nothing has changed. And also, your receptionist, if they've got the time, maybe they can help the patients complete those forms. Can they just say, because I have gone to some places where they go, are you still in this particular street? Yes. Is your mobile number still under this? Yes. Is this your email address? Yes. That's probably all they really need, unless they're checking medical and health records. But maybe that's something that can actually happen in the room, not in the reception area while there's other people around. So the next thing, you want to build that like first patient script. And this isn't something that is written word for word that they must follow, and it sounds really robotic, because you want it to sound really natural. But you want to almost have a framework. When the patient arrives, this is what the receptionist or whoever's at the front is going to say to them. Because sometimes, and this is important, the receptionist may be busy. They might be on the phone, and the podiatrist just happens to be standing at the counter. They need to know that same process that the receptionist would run through, because if the receptionist is at the back, the podiatrist is at the front, the patient walks in, they need to know that actual process. So you have a script that they follow, what they say, when they say it. If the podiatrist is running 5 or 10 minutes late, how they actually mention that in a professional manner, and direct the patient on where you want them to actually go next, or where you want them to sit. Now, next thing I want to talk about, and I think we did this really well in my clinic, is make the waiting room a talking point. We used to have colorful furniture, and like I said, we had water bottles in the fridge in the reception area that they could readily grab. We had funny cartoons on the wall. We did have a TV set there playing certain things. We had two iPads actually set up we're supposed to keep the kids entertained, but sometimes there are adults on there playing games as well. So we tried to make our reception area an experience. You might put interesting quotes on the walls. What you don't want is the clinic reception area to look like they've just arrived at an accountant's office. Dull and boring. Give people something that is memorable, that they may even talk about when they get back to work, or maybe even get home. Now, here's a few ideas. You might put some interesting quotes on the wall, like I always have the quote behind me. You might have sporting memorabilia around the reception area. I know my physio, he has been to, I don't know how many Olympic Games and how many other things or sporting events that he's been to. I remember him mentioning it once, and I said, do you ever get jerseys or anything like that? He said, oh, yeah, I've got heaps of stuff. It's all sitting out in this back room. After talking with me, now he has memorabilia through his reception area, all his consultation rooms. And he just said, it's amazing how many people actually want to talk about some of the things that he's been to. But it might be some photography from your particular area. It could be something that's modern. It might be something that's an aerial shot, or it might be some shots from the past. One of my favorite places I go to whenever I'm down towards the Gold Coast is the Yatla Pie Shop. And if you've never been to the Yatla Pie Shop, there's something you need to do. So I think it's in the top 150 tourist destinations in Queensland, and it's a pie shop. But anyway, they have a lot of old photographs on the walls. And I remember as a kid that my parents used to take me there. And I remember these old photographs in their old shop, and they actually brought them along, and they've got them all in the area where everybody eats. If you have photographs, or you can find photographs of your town that are quite old, putting them up on the walls could be a good talking point. And like I said, we had funny pictures in our reception area, and they were just funny foot cartoons. So if you can find some of them, that always works. I have seen somebody mentioned once about having a wall of weird objects that have been removed from shoes. And I will admit, we did pull out some very interesting things from footwear sometimes. So maybe that's something that you could do. Or it could be a podiatry myth board. There could be myths about podiatry that you might write up. And once again, it just gets people talking. What you want patients arriving, looking around, and then leaving thinking, this clinic actually had personality. Now, the next one I want to talk about is something that I just saw recently at a doctor surgery that I was at. And it was almost like introducing the patients to the practitioner before they actually met them. In their reception area, I think there's about 6 or 7 doctors there. And they've got these big wall posters. And on the wall poster has who the doctor is. It's a little bit of bio about them, what sports that they like, and even simple things like what's their favorite coffee or a weird fact. So I remember the doctor I was going to see, who I'd never met before. I read through a bit of their bio on there and actually felt like I knew them a little bit better before I walked in there. And I can tell just by them having them on the wall, this new clinic they've been going to, and they mentioned it to their receptionist this morning, that I said, I just love the vibe of this clinic. It just has such a good feel about it. And even the receptionist said, that's why I work here. As soon as I applied for the job here and I walked in, I knew this is a place I wanted to work. And all the doctors and nurses that work there, they've all got that same, not so much an upbeat personality, but just this very friendly feel about the clinic. And I think it all starts by having these pictures up on the wall. I think another thing you can do, this would probably be the 8th thing that I mentioned, is mastering the transition from the reception area into the treatment room. So you've got to work out what works best for you. So especially, you just want to make sure it's not clunky. So for example, does the receptionist take the patient into the room? When they do, where do they seat them? Do they take their shoes off? Do they leave the shoes on? Do they sit them in the treatment chair, or do they sit them at the desk or at a seat that's near the desk where the podiatrist is going to be? Or, and this is how I used to like to do it, I used to love walking out the reception area, meeting the patient, introducing myself, and walking down to the clinic beside them. We had quite wide hallways, so we could do this. I used to like walking beside them, and I talked to them a little bit before we got to the room. And even then, just the pace that they walked at told me a lot about who that patient was. So whatever you do, just make sure it's not clunky. It's very streamlined. You're not getting in each other's way. You're not people crossing over each other. So just give us some real thought, because that transition from the reception area to the treatment room is, other than when they first arrive at the clinic, that is the next stage that they're going to go through. Now, the 9th thing I want to talk about is adding one unexpected wow. You don't need 10 of them. You don't need to wow the patient every 5 minutes with something. You want to wow them with something that, whether it was when they arrive or not, I'm going to go through a couple of ideas, but you want to wow them so that one thing really sits in their mind, and that's probably going to be the thing they're going to talk to other people about. And this is why your clinic become legendary for doing this. Some examples could be a personalized follow-up video after the first visit. The patient might leave with, depending on the type of treatment, is there some form of foot care kit that you may provide based on the treatment that they had? I know some clinics, they have branded socks that they give away to patients. Kids might actually choose from a treasure chest. They might have a box there, and they let the kids pick something. And they can just be small, inexpensive gifts. Just make sure they're not choking hazards. But that kid having that toy, that'll be something that the parents will actually talk about. If you have a lot of runners in your clinic, you may provide videos on different lacing techniques, or you may show them some lacing techniques that they will leave with. The main idea behind all this is your wow, whatever it is that you're going to do, it should feel that it's thoughtful, it's relevant, and it's slightly surprising. Definitely not gimmicky. Don't do something when patients see that, and depending on how it's delivered, you can think it's a little bit tacky. And I think we've all been to places where someone has done something gimmicky and it's had probably the opposite effect of what you really wanted. And especially in podiatry, I think in healthcare, professionalism is really important. So just keep that top of mind. And the last thing I want to finish on is, and this is almost like a hidden superpower. You got to teach your staff, you got to teach your whole team, the people at the front, the reception, anyone that is dealing with patients, they need to be able to recognize when a patient is nervous. They need to recognize if a patient is embarrassed about a particular problem. They need to be aware if an elderly patient moves slowly, so they can allow time to get them in the room if there's a transition between patients. They need to recognize if a parent seems overwhelmed with their children. If they've got a couple of kids with them, some parents cope with it really well. Others don't cope as well. So can you help in some way? So the best clinics, I believe, and the best team are the ones that they don't just process patients. They just have patients running through the system. They read the room. They pay attention to what's going on around them, and they make the adjustments as needed. So like if there was a tradie that came walking in, and you know they've walked in straight from work, and you may notice if their clothes are quite dirty, do you get up and meet them before they actually go sitting in a nice plush chair where they could leave grease or dirt or other marks, whether it's on your floor? Just pay attention to this, because sometimes they may not be thinking about it. They're just coming straight from work and they're about to plonk themselves down on your very clean furniture. So be aware, make sure your team can read the room. And one more important thing I just want to finish on for this particular episode is always be paying attention when you're out and about and you're at other businesses, whether it's healthcare or non-healthcare, might be a hotel, it might be a restaurant. Pay attention to all the things that happen that make you go, wow. And then make a mental note of it where you put it down in your phone or you write it down in a napkin, but pay attention to the things that when you see it happen, you go, that was absolutely fantastic. And then think about, how can I do something similar in my podiatry business? Get together with your team, share the idea, and then have them also on the lookout for ideas or things that other people are doing that they go, wow, that was absolutely amazing. Now, not every idea you see that you can implement. There's some things that a luxury hotel will do that there's no way that you can do that. It's just not financially viable to do that. But there's other things that they do that you probably can do, and it may not always cost you a lot of money. So I want you to take that all on board. I hope you get something from that. And this being a solo episode, please, I'd love your feedback. Send me an email. You can send it to tyson@podiatrylegends.com. And if you haven't visited the Podiatry Legends website yet, just go to podiatrylegends.com. There you'll see all the different episodes and some other information about the podcast, some of the businesses that we actually support, some of the businesses that actually support us. And one last thing before I finish is, if you're enjoying the podcast, you listen to it on a weekly basis, or most weeks. I'm sure sometimes there's episodes you go, that one doesn't interest me. But if you're a regular listener to the podcast, please go to whatever podcast platform you listen to this show on and give me a rating and a review. I've got a goal set for the end of this year that I want to reach. And I hope if you haven't written a rating review already, that you will get off your bum and actually do it. I would really appreciate it. Every week, I love putting this podcast together, love having guests on here, and I also enjoy doing the solo episodes. So anyway, that's it for me this week. I want you to look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you next week. Bye for now.